Hello and welcome to Everybody Eats, a Washington Wizards podcast on the Blue Wire Network. My name is Varun Shankar. I'm the Wizards reporter for the Washington Post. The Wizards have lost 5 straight games, but there's still a lot to talk about with their young talent. Joining me to do so is Ben Golliver, national NBA reporter for the Washington Post. Before we get to that, if you like the show and you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you like the show and you're listening on a podcast platform, please leave a 5-star review. Ben is fantastic. We kind of stuck to my outline, but we also just jumped around a bunch of different places. It was a fantastic conversation. Let's get to it right now. Joining me now is Ben Golliver, national NBA reporter for the Washington Post. Ben, how are you, man?
Doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm in a hotel in the Boston, Massachusetts area. I can't say Boston because I'm not technically inside the city limits, but it is Tuesday evening after a long day of travel. I am excited for tomorrow's game, and I'm ready for this podcast.
Just say the Boston suburbs, right? The greater Boston area.
Yeah, true. The greater Boston area. That's better. What about you?
Everything's good, man. Getting ready for the Thunder and Clippers tonight here in Los Angeles. I guess Wemby and the Spurs come through tomorrow night. So it's a busy week. Very exciting. Get to see the defending champs and get to see one of the young guys who's trying to, knock them off eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a very exciting time in the NBA as always. And of course, let's start with the most exciting team in the NBA, the Washington Wizards. Let's start where all good journalism should, with the lead. What's the most important story about the Washington Wizards over the last week?
Well, I think you could take some positives from the performance against the Knicks. I feel like some of these young guys are coming together. When I'm watching them play, they're not really putting together 4 full quarters, but it feels to me like more cohesiveness, more togetherness with the young group. It feels like maybe there's an identity starting to form. So I'd say that, perhaps that's one lead. To me, though, if you're really zooming back, the lead is that college basketball season starts. This draft class is loaded. And for whatever reason, and this is an exclusive to you and your podcast listeners, I have an inkling that the Wizards are going to win the lottery this year. I just feel it in my bones. And here's the thing. I've told you before, they had no chance to get Wemby. I just felt very strongly they were not going to get Wemby. I felt they had no chance to get Cooper Flagg. Felt that one from very, very early on in that draft class. As you know, they were one ping pong ball away from both those guys. This is the year they're going to win it, and they're going to get Darryn Peterson. I just feel it, man. I think if we look back 12 months from now, you're going to be covering one of the most excited, talked about rookies in years, and he's going to have a whole bunch of guys right now who are basically auditioning to be his supporting cast. So that's my big picture takeaway. There's not really any logic to it. This is pure vibes, but I could feel the vibes. The Wizards are taking home that number 1 pick.
This is fantastic because when it's a lottery, I don't know, 6 months from now, the Wizards actually end up winning the lottery, I can clip this and put this up and be like, yeah. Ben knew, he's inside the room, he knows. And if you're wrong, well, everyone will have forgotten about this by then. You say Darryn Peterson, you're not as much of you're somewhat of a college basketball guy? I don't know. The Michigan ties?
Yeah, I like the draft stuff. I don't watch, I'm not granted as many games as a lot of people, but when you have a class like this where you have 3 players who are getting already talked about as franchise level guys, AJ Debonsa, Cameron Boozer, and Darryn Peterson, I feel like you kind of have to keep one eye on it, especially in your position where literally, I wouldn't say it's the only goal of the season, but this is a successful season if they pull one of those 3 guys. There's kind of no way around it. I did a story on Cameron Boozer this week and kind of how he's taking the reins at Duke and following in his dad's footsteps a little bit reluctantly. I've been very impressed with him as a player. I think AJ Debonsa, we had a great profile in the post on him written by Jesse. Everybody should go check that out as well. But I just think all 3 of these guys are showstoppers. And because of the NIL era, I think it's actually easier to attract this talent because they're not going overseas. There's been less foreign impact guys these last couple of years. It's been a lot of consolidation of NCAA prospects. And so, we're getting a nice preview of them starting this week.
It's also nice that college basketball, because of the NIL stuff you're talking about, it has a little bit more juice now because those top guys are playing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Peterson is really interesting to me because, it's kind of a perfect fit for the Wizards, who seem like they've solved is maybe a bit strong, but seem like they might have answers at the 5 with Alex Sarr, the 3 and the 4 with Bilal Coulibaly maybe, and Keyshawn George, obviously, who's blossomed this year. They really don't have that guy at the lead guard, and they don't have someone who I think, is going to be running a ton of pick and rolls every single game, even though they've had players who have done that this year. I think when they want to be a winning team long term, I don't think they have the guy who's going to be the engine of their offense yet. And Darryn Peterson seems like he can do all of that, and he also has the defensive identity on that side. And he's got the positional size, he's got the length. I mean, he does seem like the total package. Not to get Wizards fans totally excited for someone that might not be there at all.
No, I mean, I think the fit is there. Like you said, the length defensively really pops. I mean, he's got super duper long arms, really active. I think that's probably the direction the Wizards feel like they're trying to go. I don't know if they've made a ton of progress, but, with some of the recent picks, it feels like they're trying to almost have a defense first identity. And so he plugs in with that. And then the biggest thing that the Wizards have been missing is that franchise player. You have a bunch of guys who you feel like, hey, they could be part of the core, but they always look worse because they're not. They're almost a little bit underqualified for the role they're being asked to do. Right? Like Alex Sarr is not going to be a franchise guy in his first couple of years, but could he be a number 3 guy as he progresses through his rookie contract? Seems very possible, right? Keyshawn George, I think one of the reasons why he's so exciting for Wizards fans, he feels like a complete player, right? He's kind of filling up the box score. He's doing a little bit on both ends. And so many of their recent draft picks, in my eyes, have sort of been one-way guys. They're either, shooters or they're defensive-minded players. They're not that kind of complete impact player. And so you put Peterson into this mix, I think it would be an instant fit. He'd immediately sort of be the quote-unquote best player. It feels like he has the game to live up to that. And I think all these role players would benefit from being around him. One stat that I looked up about the Wizards this season, because I was going back through your gamers, and I noticed a trend, which I'm sure you've noticed, which is the second halves aren't going very well. They let go of the rope maybe a little bit in the third,
just
fourth
quarter.
Bit. And Washington ranks dead last by a mile in fourth quarter net rating. I mean, they're just getting absolutely destroyed. And the defense hasn't been great, but to me, the number really showed through was the offense. The offensive rating in the fourth quarter is like 92 or something like that, which is not nearly good enough. That's exactly what happens when you don't know who your lead ball handler is, when you have a hole in that spot. And so, I mean, obviously he plugs that hole, and that number is going to look different probably as soon as his rookie year if he shows up, right? But I think for right now, it's one area of potential improvement for these Wizards. Like they're scaring some of these teams. I mean, I thought there was a lot of back and forth between Sarr and Towns in that game, and they're pushing some of these teams. They're just not making it to the finish line, and I'm not sure you can do that unless you plug that hole.
Yeah, I should also mention when I was going through the lineups, I mean, even at the 2-guard spot, Trey Johnson has looked pretty good. Bub Carrington has been a little bit up and down so far this year, but he may be someone who fits into that spot. And yeah, the point guard spot is the one that is yet to be addressed really well, and I think Darryn Peterson would be a great option to address it. You think about, I think it was Fred Katz who said this on this podcast last week or 2 weeks ago. He was talking about how the Wizards might be doing this in reverse. Usually you get the star, and then you try and surround him with supplementary players, but the Wizards, because of some of the lottery placement that has happened, some of the drafts that they've been picking, and have maybe gotten the supplementary guys first, and then they just drop the star in, and he's got the ecosystem to thrive. But we'll see. I had a similar lead. Like last year, the Wizards are still losing. They want to lose. They have a vested interest in terms of the protected pick that they owe to the New York Knicks if they fall out of the top 8 to lose. But unlike last year, this is a team losing behind its young players. Washington last year still got a decent amount of contributions from guys like Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma. And when they stayed close in games and when they won games, it was often because one of those guys, particularly Poole late in the season, had an explosive game, a game where the shots were falling. That's not the case this year. The 4 of their top 5 scorers right now are recent draft picks. The best player on the team isn't CJ McCollum. It's not Chris Middleton. It's Keyshawn George or Alex Sarr right now. And I think that's a function of 2 things. One, it's a function of George and Sarr getting better from their rookie years and really starting to take a step. It's also a function of McCollum and Middleton being more cognizant of what their role is on the team and having the self-awareness, but also the awareness of the team concept, the team context, to take a step back and let these younger guys assert themselves in the moments where that's necessary.
Well, they're just later in their careers, both those guys, right?
Yes.
I mean, with Middleton, it's been years removed since he's been a real big impact player. And I think he kind of understands the deal where he's not playing for another big contract, right? Like, he's a great locker room guy. I mean, he's a winner, champion. I mean, he was so good in that championship run for the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, saved their bacon multiple times with Giannis dealing with, a leg injury late in that playoff run. So he knows the deal, right? It's not like he has to go out there and get his numbers to justify a new contract. I think a similar thing with CJ McCollum as well. I think when you see that trade happen, you're on a team in New Orleans, which, for whatever reason, they didn't want to lose, like you're describing Washington. Like they thought they were trying to win and they just couldn't make it happen. And I think when you get traded to an even younger team in Washington where the priority is development, and, I think for him, you would rather he's just a good big brother, uncle mentorship type figure, as opposed to someone who's putting up big numbers and getting in anybody's way. And I think it's a credit to both those guys that you're seeing some of these young guys thrive. I mean, to me, Keyshawn George has got to be the biggest story for Washington to start this year. I mean, if they were winning more games, I think he would be getting thrown into that most improved player conversation as an early candidate there. I think he's like more than doubled his scoring average. He just looks calm on the ball, right? And maybe that is the year one to year two jump. We've seen similar progress from Sarr too, where he looks more comfortable with contact. He's going into Towns' chest. He's going over the top of Towns. Last year, it felt like he was sort of ejecting out of contact in a lot of situations, right? So I think for both those guys, they're making their own names here. I think there's nothing really in the way for them, and that's good. You want the exploratory stage to really unfold properly. You don't want them to just sort of be waiting around for ball dominant guys to eventually give them a look. It feels like they're higher priorities, and they're putting up numbers to show for it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back at the Jordan Poole trade to the Pelicans, most of Washington's reasoning for that was, hey, we have an opportunity to get off this contract and get a year closer to the financial flexibility that we would like. Another factor of it, though, is that swap of players going from Poole to McCollum gets you a less ball-dominant player and allows you to put the ball in Keyshawn George's hands more, in Alex Sarr's hands more. I mean, that was one of the very real reasons the Wizards made that trade. And if you look at McCollum this year, he has the lowest usage rate of his career since 2014-15. So you could see the conscious step that's been taken back by him. And I think part of it is also the way that the Wizards have engineered their offense. They are running most of this offense is a two-man game with Sarr and Keyshawn George. That's the most interesting part of this offense, at least, and that's the part of this offense that has flashed the most through the early part of the season, and that doesn't happen if the veterans aren't willing to acquiesce, I guess is one of the word, or take that conscious step back.
Yeah, or if they just were trying to get out. So they're like, hey, I just got to put up numbers so I can get traded. I mean, sometimes guys don't embrace the team or the role, and it's like the easiest way for me to get traded is either to be a jerk, right? So the team doesn't want me here, or it's to just get as much numbers as possible so somebody else wants to trade for me. You're not really seeing that from the two vets, so that's good. I mean, not to hijack things too much. I know you do like a stock up, stock down thing. How about stock down for Jordan Poole? I saw him take some shots at Wizards fans and the environment in the arena. I enjoyed you interviewing the fans, some of whom were Wizards fans, some of whom weren't at that Wizards game. I think it was against the Sixers, right? But who won the trade, really? Let's be honest.
Definitive.
I mean, Jordan Poole going to New Orleans, he's already lost a starting spot to a rookie. I saw him here in LA last week. As soon as he's coming in off the bench, the ball is going up every time he touches it. I mean, there is absolutely no hesitation whatsoever. He actually had a pretty good game against the Clippers, but you look at the Pelicans, they're coming in this season trading for Poole because they want to win. They have a worse record than the Wizards. Their coach is on the hot seat. He may get fired, any day now. I saw people were tracking the Pelicans' flight patterns home to see if maybe Willie Green was going to get fired on the tarmac. I mean, that's obviously desperate times. And they don't have a lottery pick. So all this hope selling I'm doing to you and the Wizards fans about winning the number one pick and getting Darryn Peterson, hey, congratulations, New Orleans. You're probably going to lose 60 games, and you're not going to have anything to show for it whatsoever in the lottery. So who really won? So you want to take shots at the Wizards fans and maybe look in the mirror a little bit. That's all I'm saying.
It's a little unfortunate because I thought of the last couple of years, not his first year in Washington, but particularly his second year in Washington. I thought Poole was a pretty good veteran to the Wizards young guys. I thought he did a good job of taking them under his wing. I remember Bilal Coulibaly saying that either Poole moved his locker or moved Bilal's locker after the first day of training camp so they would be next to each other so he could, be that big brother in a lot of ways to Bilal. And he did that for the Wizards' other young guys, but I mean, he's really struggling. That organization is really struggling. And you ask who won? The Atlanta Hawks won, man. Oh my God, they've got to be feeling so good right now. Obviously, the Trae Young injury and the season hasn't gotten as great a start for them as they would like. But that is a great pick to have.
No question. And I mean, they're going to be sweating that lottery night, man. You could just imagine. Well, so what did you make of Poole's comments? I mean, was that just kind of an unnecessary drive-by? I mean, I get that he's probably speaking the truth to some degree, but I don't know. Is that the way you want to leave things? It feels like a lot of bad blood, like Miles Turner the other night going back to
Oh
Indiana, he's
man.
getting booed and all this. I mean, are these things necessary? I don't get it.
Probably not. I mean, I don't know Jordan's motivations for saying that. I think would sometimes critique the fans when he was here. He would sometimes praise the fans when he was here. I think some of what he said is just trying to endear himself to a new fan base, but I don't know that the shot at the Wizards was necessary as he went out the door. But it is what it is. All right, let's get to the first segment: stock up, stock down, and let's start with stock up. And I'm going to start with Alex Sarr, who is coming off a pretty solid game against the Knicks. Sarr had a career-high 7 assists, and it shows some of the passing chops that were there last year, but have stepped up a little bit more this year. So he's assisting on about 23% of the Wizards' made baskets when he's on the floor. That's in the 90th percentile for the bigs. And you see how he's able to do it. There's a lot of different ways. Last year, it was mostly with him operating from the short roll, where teams would maybe blitz Jordan Poole, he would kind of leak out, he would get the ball, and now he's playing 4-on-3, and he has a good understanding of where everyone is on the court at a given moment and can get the pass out to whoever needs to get it. This year, it's a little bit different because he did some of this last year, but he's operating so much from the top of the key. He's got guys running all around him, he's got guys screening for him, and he's just operating the offense. And maybe he's looking for a cutter sometimes. He's found a lot of cutters against the Knicks last night, but in other moments, what has also really impressed me is his ability to keep the offense flowing, where okay, I'm looking on this side for a cutter, nothing, okay, I'm going to take a couple dribbles this way, maybe there's a lane to drive, if not, I'm going to get into a DHO with one of the guards who's coming around it. So I think he's done a really good job of getting the engine of the offense moving again and again, and we've seen that one of the best ways to get a better offense is just to run more actions and make sure that every second that you get of the shot clock is purposeful. And I think Sarr's ability to connect two disparate parts of a possession is a key part for that for the Wizards.
Well, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about not having the star on the team or not having a lead ball handler. You need to have everybody chipping in and helping there. And if you have a big guy who can function as sort of a secondary creator, who can keep the ball moving as you're describing very well, that's golden. I mean, that's a huge step. I mean, I think the frustrating part of his offense last year was when there wasn't the flow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's just like standstill jumpers, right? Where, teams often are kind of just daring him, the pick and pop stuff where you just kind of can't resist it. And in a lot of cases, those are low efficiency shots. And they're also, I mean, for lack of a better phrase, energy suckers, right? It's like if you have a guy out there who's just taking and missing jumpers, who's your big guy, and so he's not in there to rebound either, it's like dead possessions. And then, what is the purpose here? Like, what are we really trying to do? Who's benefiting from that? And so the more you can keep him in flow, the more you can keep his offense going downhill, in my opinion, the better. And, to me, I was just really impressed by his assertiveness against Towns. I mean, as you mentioned, Towns is an exploitable defensive player. And for Sarr to try to kind of go at him in the paint, chest to chest, try to go over the top of him in some cases, that's the aggressiveness you want to see from a number 2 pick, especially if you're drafting a 7-footer who you're really drafting on athletic potential, right? I mean, that's sort of the main reason. He's got a fantastic body and physical tools. You want to feel him. You want to see dunks. You want to see, paint points. You want to see free throw attempts. And again, maybe he's not putting together a complete game, or he's putting together a complete week of games, but you're seeing more flashes there. I think that matchup he had with Embiid as well, he scored some points in that one as well. So to me, that's progress. He just looks less scared. He looks more comfortable and more physical than he did last season.
Absolutely. And there are going to be nights. I mean, there were times last night where Towns put him in the basket once, and you could see just the strength differential, and that's a good reminder that no matter what we think of Alex Sarr right now, he's still only in year 2. He came in as a teenager. Like, this is a very young guy who's still developing both his skills but also his body. But the assertiveness is what stands out to me, and the approach is what stands out to me. He's getting inside, and he's always moving forward, where last year you would see so many fadeaways and shying away from contact. But you look at the Knicks, his second bucket of the game, he catches a ball inside the arc, and he goes hard at Towns, goes straight up for an and-one. The next bucket, he catches at the free throw line, he goes left, pump fake, and a bucket. And every single time you see more patience, more comfort, and more force down low when he's playing, and those are all good things you like to see. Two downstream effects of him playing inside more. One, he's drawing the defense in, and that opens up some
Oh
of
yeah.
the passes to the corner. He's just putting more. It's rim pressure, right? Even if you're just rolling without the ball, that's someone that has to come in and maybe tag you, and that opens up a pass for Keyshawn George whipping something to the corner or something like that. The other thing is his rebounding. Last year, he was in the 32nd percentile of the percentage of offensive rebounds he grabbed and the 37th percentile of defensive rebounds. This year, he's 47th percentile on offensive rebounds grabbed. He had a nice putback against Towns yesterday on his own miss. And then he's in the 82nd percentile on defensive rebounds. For someone who is going to make his name primarily on defense, being able to have a better sense of when to go for blocks, when to stay back, and when to just, get a man, box out, get the shot, and, get the rebound, that's something that has also really impressed me.
I think that's a great metric to continue tracking as he gets closer to his prime. There is nothing preventing him from being among the very best defensive rebounders in the NBA, right? It's like he's got the size, he's got the leaping ability. He's going to be in that position, constantly. He's going to be playing a lot of minutes as he gets closer to that. So you want to just continue to see that ramping up as he goes forward.
It's something that can also separate him a little bit from a common parallel to him, I think, is Jaren Jackson Jr. of the Memphis Grizzlies. And Jaren Jackson has always been a bad rebounder. And he plays the four, so there's a little bit of a difference here. But if Sarr is able to be a good defensive rebounder in addition to some of the defensive stuff he can do around the rim, that now makes him a long-term five and someone who his skills are so much more valuable at the five than they are at the four.
Yeah, and I think that they should keep doing that. I mean, how many? Do you know the breakdown on possessions? He's playing at the five this year.
It's 100% so far this year, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't have it up right now, but
so this is one of those things where big picture, it's going to be frustrating short term for Wizards fans to watch at times because he's going to gamble too much defensively. He's going to get himself a little bit out of position. Maybe he's a little too jumpy going for block shots, and the defensive efficiency numbers aren't looking great, right? Long term, to have him have the mentality that you are a center. We know you like to score. We know you like to shoot. We know you studied Kevin Durant and all these guys, but you have to do that as a five. That is worth its weight in gold because you get so many guys, even from Anthony Davis on down, who just have it stuck in their head. I mean, go back to like LaMarcus Aldridge. They have it stuck in their head. I have to be a four. I have to be a four. But like you said, if you have a five who can handle the defensive responsibilities and you can surround them with four shooting threats or four driving threats, your offense is going to be so much better than if that same player is playing power forward and you have to play him alongside a center who can't, be as dynamic, can't score as many different ways, clogs the paint because all he can do is score around the hoop, right? So, the short-term pain that might be going with the defense right now in terms of playing so many young guys and putting a lot on Sarr's shoulders, to me, it should pay off with a long-term gain here as long as he continues to develop and handle those five responsibilities.
Absolutely. And one other thing that stands out with the defense. So he has a knack for not fouling despite how many shots he contests at the rim. So he's blocking 3.7% of opposing shot attempts. That's above a 90th percentile rate per cleaning the glass. He's fouling on just 1.5% of team plays when he's on the court. Among players with a foul rate that low, he is the only one with a block rate above 1%. That's a 100 percentile foul rate among bigs. So he has a really great feel for when to go for blocks, when to stay back, and when to avoid getting those fouls that could knock other big men out of the game.
It's another contrast with Jaren, who you mentioned earlier. I mean, it's been a problem basically his whole career. It was a huge problem when he played for USA basketball because you only get 5 fouls in the international game. But I mean, this guy was just perennially in foul trouble every time they were in the playoffs. I mean, he would just get himself to 4 fouls and he'd be sitting for long stretches of the second half. That's a first world problem. You want your bigs in the playoffs, so. But it was a serious issue, and it was a real
absolutely.
limitation. And again, maybe not something that Sarr has to worry about. You don't want to go too far the other way, though. I mean, there are some amazing stats. Like, didn't Duncan have more block shots than fouls during his career? He had some like insane stat like that, right? Because he was just so smart. He was so good with his hands, so good with his feet, understood positioning that he really could defend an entire game at a defensive player of the year level and never foul. But you still want to feel the guys, and I think for Sarr, you don't want to, you don't want to get too cute with it. You still want to have a physical presence and, it's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's your first stock up?
Well, Sarr was on my list too, so we
Okay.
went pretty detailed there. I mean, I think it feels like Keyshawn George's stock is through the moon. I mean, he's probably been on your list every week. Let me guess. I mean, like
Yeah.
I don't know exactly. Probably. As I said earlier, most improved player candidate. The comfort, the pacing on the ball, I feel like has been pretty impressive. It seems like he can't miss, and so maybe that's the other shoe dropping is at some point are these percentages going to come back to earth a little bit? I don't know if you have them handy, but it just feels like he's just absolutely shooting the bleep out of the basketball right now. And when that's happening, everybody looks better, right? But the defensive activity to me has been impressive as well. And I think what's really the ceiling there? I think that's kind of the question. I mean, have you thought about that at all in terms of where does this go for him?
Yeah, I've been thinking he's not. He's. It's a tough question to answer in part because he's a little bit older than the other Wizards young guys. So I'm kind of curious how much of his growth curve, and I mean growth curve in terms of his potential as a player, not physical growth, is because of that, just because he's a little bit ahead. But I mean, he's got the mentality that you want in a player. I mean, the Wizards have raved about the work that he put in over the summer, and you can see it, right? The dribble is so much tighter than it was last year, and it's allowing him to be a pretty high volume pick and roll player right now. The offense, in a lot of ways, is centered around that Keyshawn George, Alex Sarr pick and roll. And you talked about the percentages. He is shooting 82% at the rim right now compared to 56% last year. That's probably going to come down. I don't think that
Yeah.
Keyshawn George is suddenly going to be one of the best finishers in the league for wings. But again, this is someone with a really big body. He is so strong. He is knocking back veteran NBA players again and again and getting to either a layup down low or a mid range shot. He's shooting unsustainably high from three right now. That's going to come down. But again, this is someone who I think expects himself to be a high 30s, low 40s 3-point shooter on pretty high volume. So I still maintain that we're not looking at a future all NBA player. But I do think that this is someone who can be a definitive starter on a very good team at some point, and maybe even a little bit more than that. I don't think he makes an All NBA team at this point in his career, but if you told me that you had a time machine, went 5 years into the future, came back, and that he had made one, I could see that possibility being true.
Personality wise, how does he strike you? I mean, what's the lowdown on just kind of how his approach to the game? What's he like?
Even keeled. He always speaks, and I think like one register the entire time, whether it's a win or a loss. Always, he's saying the right thing, but it also does sound like he actually believes it a lot of the time. We talked to him about not getting fouled on a call, and he was like, listen, whether they make the call or not, if they didn't make the call, I didn't get fouled. I have to make the shot regardless. Everything you hear about his work ethic, everything you hear about the expectations he has for himself and for the team, it all impresses. It all impresses. And I think this is someone who has, even at his young age, shouldered some leadership responsibilities, in part because the Wizards want him to, and it's paying dividends.
Awesome. Who else we got on the stock up?
I'll put Bilal Coulibaly. Last night against the Knicks was his third game back. Not, I don't want to put any stock really into some of the numbers that we're seeing from him, but one thing I will point out is he is taking three-pointers very confidently. And for someone who struggled mightily from three last season and struggled so badly that by the end of the year he was kind of not taking the shots at all, in addition to some of the struggles he was having making them, the confidence that he's taking. I mean, he took a couple against the Knicks yesterday with a hand in his face, right? And that's the kind of thing where if he just keeps on taking them, you hope eventually that he will be able to start hitting them down on a consistent rate. He's at 35% right now. If he finishes a year at 35% from three on even decent volume, you're throwing a party if you're the Wizards, because now that can have some secondary effects for what he can do with the ball in his hands, how defenses have to guard him, what he can be attacking closeouts. And so we will see. It is a long way away. He has played 3 games, but the confidence on the three-point shot is something worth monitoring as the season goes on.
No, I was interested. You wrote that they kind of used him as a designated stopper against OKC.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Oh, yeah.
tall order, tall task. How did it go for him? That feels like the best case scenario for him longer term, though, doesn't it? I mean, I know what you're saying. If he can hit the threes, that's great. Even if it's league average, you're like super excited about it. But the idea of like, hey, throw him out there and just harass other teams' lead ball handlers and try to force turnovers, that would be the ideal, right?
Absolutely. The defensive stuff is on the ball, he's fantastic already. And you're seeing some of the impact he had last year against Trae Young. I remember he was really great. He had some good moments against LaMelo. He guarded Shea against OKC, and he looked good. This is someone who takes pride on the defensive side of the ball, has all of the physical tools you need to be good on that side of the ball, has active hands. He forces turnovers. He's done all that stuff. The three for me is, I think the Wizards had a vision early last year of Bilal being someone who was a primary creator on offense, or at least they wanted to see how that looked. It didn't go particularly well, in part because the three-pointer wasn't there. Even if he's someone, and I'm not going to rule that out for him. I think he's only 21 years old. But even if he's only someone who plays excellent defense and then is someone who can hit threes, so you can keep him on the court on offense and can attack a closeout, man, that's an extremely valuable player. That's a player that makes a lot of money and is a starter on a good team.
Yeah, one thing we're seeing around the league is, like higher pressure defense, picking up earlier. Some teams are full court pressing. I think about some of the guys Portland has, like a Kamara type where it's the big body, but he's just like really hounding guys, really 1 to 4, positionally. I don't know if maybe that's a potential model for him. I mean, obviously you want him to shoot better than Kamara does, but I think that there's a lot of money to be made if you have that ability to be the point of attack defender who just is willing to run himself ragged. We're seeing a lot of teams looking at this idea of pace in terms of how fast the NBA game is going. Like Memphis is rethinking its rotations, how long guys get to play at any one time to try to maximize the player's effectiveness because the game is so fast. You're seeing Miami right now just try to be the fastest team by a mile in the league, get up and down the court, see if there's some advantage to be gleaned from just, playing track meet basketball and trying to blow everybody off the court. So this feels like a very fertile ground for experimentation. And I think if you're the Wizards, and let's be honest, I mean, you're not probably going to be competing for the play-in tournament this year.
Oh yeah,
turn him loose. See what he could do. Just get a little wild with it, and maybe work on your own tempo and see if you can have a little bit better results. I guess on the defensive end by really encouraging these guys to be stoppers. And I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, but I think those are some models that are going on elsewhere that could be applicable to him.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to stock down. I'll start here. Bub Carrington, right? It's early. He's very young. Being a young guard in the NBA is extremely difficult, but he's undeniably struggling. He's shooting worse than he did last year, 31.1% from the field. He is above 40% on threes, which is an encouraging sign after he was okay in that area last year. But he's turning the ball over more last year, and he has a lower assist percentage. Offense has been a issue for him so far this year. Defense has been a little bit better. He's been very active at the point of attack, especially taking on some tough assignments when Coulibaly was out. But I don't think his defense has been as good as the Wizards say it is. The effort and activity is there, but he still gets caught on a lot of screens. This is what happens with a young guard. You got to let him play through it.
I am actually stunned that you didn't take Cam Whitmore with your first pick.
That's
I don't know if you rank these, but is he on your list as well?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, well, with Bub, you've invested the draft pick. You have a lot to gain from him being a success story. So you do want to give him the leash. You kind of do want to make it work. You want to be able to kind of pay this off with your core of guys that you've hand selected to be Wizards, right? With Cam, it feels more like it's flyer, right? It's like, well, It didn't work out for him in his first stop. Let's see what he can do here. If the returns continue to be what they've been, what is your investment if you're the Wizards and kind of sticking with Cam Whitmore and what kind of an opportunity, I just don't view him really ever as being a part of this core group. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just me looking from the outside.
I mean, we'll see how it goes. It's been obviously, very early into his Wizards tenure, but it looks very similar to what happened with the Rockets. If you're the Wizards, you have an investment of 2 second-round picks in him, right? And so he's extension eligible after the season. I don't think that as of right now. I would be pretty surprised if he got that extension. But again, it's very early. We'll see. And then after that, if he has to go into RFA, maybe he goes into RFA and you'll see what that fourth season looks like before making any kind of decision. Because, I mean, you look at this, man. He has a career high usage, a career low points per shot attempt. He's in the 9th percentile in that efficiency mark among forwards. Negligible assist percentage. Turnovers are bad. It's been a pretty rough ride for Cam Whitmore so far in DC.
What's going well? Is there anything that's going well?
He's getting the rim more than before, but he's finishing poorly when he gets there. And that's something that's always been an issue for him in his career. He's at 60% at the rim, which is not great and in line with his career numbers. And I think with someone with a mix of athleticism and power and just overall physicality that he has should not be finishing that poorly on the rim. And I think it's personally because of the decisions he takes when he gets to the rim. Because, there was a play against Philly where he cuts inside, and he's been a really good cutter throughout his career. This is something that dates back to Villanova, and it's shown up so far with the Wizards. He cuts against Philly, and he draws 3 defenders and has the ball in the paint. He can either dump the ball off to Bagley in the dunker spot or hit Kispert in the weak side corner. Instead, he goes for a tough layup with his left and misses Kispert, who has both of his hands just wide up in the air. Same thing happens against OKC, where he drives in, Alex Caruso comes in for the weak side corner to cut off the drive. Bagley's coming in to crash the offensive glass and maybe has a chance to seal Isaiah Hartenstein and get Chris Middleton wide open in the corner. It looks like the play is wide open for that. But instead, Whitmore goes up and he's blocked by Wallace. And those are the kinds of plays where you're able to draw the defense's attention, but you're not able to do anything with it.
Yeah, I guess in his defense, it's got to be really frustrating to sit like he did in Houston, to not feel like you're a priority, to see everybody else get these chances, and to see a lot of the young guys who he came in with start, get huge minutes, get paid. I mean, it's just inevitable. You're going to do the comparison game if you're in his mentality. And so I think that when we're looking at things like assist to turnover ratio or high usage, not looking good for him, that is the most natural thing in the world when you get the second opportunity, because what do? You're pressing to make up for lost time, right? You're saying, hey, those couple of years in Houston were completely wasted. I have to catch up. I have to show people who I am. I have to justify the fact that, I should have been drafted higher on draft and I shouldn't have slipped. You have all those kinds of thoughts, the prove it thought, instead of just playing, right? And so that is a very natural way for a player's career to unfold, but the results are the results, right? So I hope someone's talking to him and saying, hey, man, like, the past is the past. Let's focus on what you're trying to do right now. Let's try to be a better finisher at the rim. Let's try to find Corey because he's wide freaking open, right? Let's make some adjustments here as we go on the fly to make this more effective so you can be part of this group. Because ultimately, like, if he's just playing camp ball, he's just kind of doing what he does, that's not really going to fit with what Wizards want, I don't think. I mean, to me, what you were talking earlier about Sarr's ball movement, the two-man pairing he's developing with Keyshawn George, that is the future. That is the promising stuff, right? It's this cohesiveness. It's the idea of the young guys all playing together and melding. And, you'll stick out like a sore thumb if you don't get on that train. So maybe this has gotten a little too negative, but, I think it's an important thing to call out when you're looking at a young team, is you got to make sure you're on board with everybody else. You're rowing the same way.
He's been a frustrating watch so far, so I'm curious to see what it looks like as the season goes on. I'm also curious what the messaging looks like in the locker room. One more thing on Bub, he's getting to the rim the same amount as he did before, and he's not finishing particularly well. One thing that stands out to me is he is someone who had a late growth spurt, and so I wonder if there's some part of it where he just needs to get more used to finishing like a big guard rather than finishing like a small guard, which is what he was for most of his career. And that's why you see him develop the pull-up shot as a key weapon for him. So that's something else on Bub. Again, very young, a lot of room to grow. Young guards are usually bad, and so you want to see what it looks like as the year moves on. He's in a new situation as far as the players he's playing with on that second unit, and so hopefully he can make that his own for his sake of the Wizards.
If you're the Wizards, you don't need everybody to hit, right? I mean, it's like if you come out of this season, right, and Sarr hits and George hits, that's such a win, for this year. And a lot of cases when you're this young, not everybody can hit because there's one basketball, right? So there's a give and a take. I enjoyed seeing Bub at Summer League in his first year. Hit the ground running, and I would love to see him be one of these guys who kind of sticks with it. Seems like he has great personality, great life story, and all that stuff. So, we'll see.
Let's go now to Ahead of the Curve, which is an early, potentially too aggressive take that you're not really tied to. Ben, why don't you go first?
I am tied to this. I burned this one earlier, but I truly believe this is Washington's year to win the lottery. And here's why. I don't know. Is there a parallel with John Wall? Because when John Wall was his college player, I mean, do you remember that at all, or am I predating your basketball?
Do you want to know how old I was when John Wall got drafted? Do you really want to know?
Probably 9 years old.
I was 8, yeah.
Oh, wow. And I was kind of being sarcastic. Well, so I was not 8 years old when John Wall was drafted, and I actually had a little website, draftjohnwall.blogspot.com. I was trying to kind of track his whole progress towards the league because I saw him play when he was in high school, and just an incredibly dynamic guard. He had long arms for his position, obviously, incredible end-to-end speed, athleticism, leaping ability. And so much of our conversation today has been about, well, what's the hole in the Wizards offense that they're trying to fill? And they really haven't perfectly filled it since John had his injury issues, right? Like it's been a lot of placeholders. You got Beal kind of trying to take on some of that responsibility. You got Westbrook coming in for the cup of coffee, right? It's this Jordan Poole experience that may or may
Spencer
not.
Dinwiddie,
Dinwiddie,
Ish Smith,
and
Tyus Jones. The Wizards' point
yeah,
guard since John Wall is its own notable graveyard.
yeah, and now you can maybe say CJ McCollum's at least somewhat into that role, but as you said, it's not really a traditional way of doing it, right? So they're ready for a new lead guard, I guess is the point. And I think, when Wall showed up, I mean, there's still some of the Gilbert Arenas stuff around, being one of the faces of the franchise there. And it wound up being kind of a transition to Wall's era. It just kind of feels like it's time, and maybe it's past due. It's been a while, but and they're not the same player, obviously, Darryn Peterson and John Wall, but I feel like they would have a similar ability to be franchise centerpiece type guy. And so I feel completely tied to it. I don't think it's too early. I'm starting the movement now. You heard it here first. Darryn Peterson to the Wizards with the number one pick. And, you finally have a new era because I do feel like it's been kind of purgatory, right? Obviously, there's progress here with this youth movement rebuild, but NBA teams are defined by their best player. And when you don't have that number one guy or someone who you can kind of build up into that spot, it just feels like you're treading water until you get them. And this is probably, one of the longer stretches in recent memory where a team has kind of gone without that. Now, you look at some other teams. Well, would you like LaMelo Ball to be your number one guy? Well, he's injured half the time. How much do you really trust him? Like, there are some worse scenarios out there, guys on gigantic contracts where you have a franchise player, but it's impossible to build around them. So what's the point? I'd rather be in Washington's situation than probably at least 10 teams in the NBA right now. But it's still a huge hole. It's time to get it filled. I don't really see them doing it by trade, despite all the cap clearing maneuvers, all the stuff they've done. Free agency, you don't really see stars moving free agency all that much anymore. It has to come from the draft. So, this is one of these things where it's like, if it doesn't happen, I will feel very bad for you and the Wizards fan. So it's got to happen. It's got to happen. This is the year.
I'd like someone to cover that exciting. That would be very fun. Darryn Peterson, great shot blocking guard, which is something that Wall did very well. Another parallel between
Great comparison,
the two.
yeah.
And so, but even outside of Peterson, right? Debansa's really exciting. Cam Boozer, and there's guys at 4 or 5. Nate Ament, I've heard some good things about. And so there is a lot of talent in this upcoming draft, and it's a position that the Wizards could find a lot of value in if the lottery gods work in their favor, which has always been a fickle thing for the Wizards.
How did you enjoy the lottery last year? I know you went to experience it in person. I mean, it didn't go Washington's way, obviously, so that might have changed the tenor a little bit. But what'd you think?
I mean, it was very cool. It was a very cool event being in the ballroom. I gotta get in the room. They give the Washington Post spot to a different guy, so I gotta find a way to get in the room. But it was very cool, and the collective air that was let out of the entire room when the Wizards showed up at 6 was grimly funny. I have to say.
Okay. Gallows humor time is what you're saying?
A little bit, yeah. All right, my early, potentially too aggressive take, and this isn't even that aggressive, but as we try and determine what success looks like for the Wizards this season, something I'm going to look at is how they perform in defensive rating. They can be decent in that area and still lose enough as a team to get in the conversations, to get a Debenta, Peterson, Boozer type. But I'm especially curious how they look when Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, and Bilal Coulibaly share the court, because when those three are on the court, you want to see that the individual defensive things that these guys are able to do, the flashes they're showing, are starting to show in the overall team defense. So right now with those three on the court, the Wizards have a 117.3 defensive rating. That's between 21st and 22nd right now. That's pretty solid. That's not bad at all. And so if you're able to stay around that area and it looks sustainable as the year goes along, that is something that would be a real sign of progress moving forward.
Well, on these same lines, when you're talking about young players kind of learning how to gel defensively. You look at San Antonio the last couple of years, under the Victor Wembanyama tenure. I mean, typically they were below average defensively, for a lot of those minutes because they're playing so many young guys or incredibly old guys around Victor, right? So sort of like he can only do so much. Eventually, if you have the young talent, they fill out, they get stronger, they start doing some of the defensive rebounding stuff like we're talking about with Alex Sarr. There could be a real jump real fast. Like this year, San Antonio, I believe they were all the way up until their most recent game, tied with OKC for first. Like they jumped from like the mid 20s defensive efficiency all the way up. And I think they're probably going to finish this season as long as Wemby stays healthy as a top 5 defense, right? So you don't want to project too far into the future, but and Sarr is not Wemby. Nobody is Wemby.
Nobody.
But if you have 3 guys who you've drafted and kind of put together here as a defensive core identity, right? You would expect that, okay, if they're 20, 21 years old and they're in the 20s defensive efficiency, that's okay. That's not the end of the world because even Wemby was kind of down there in those, in those parts. When they start to get into year 3, year 4, and they get closer to their prime, a big jump is possible. And, there's other examples out there of those kinds of things that have happened with young bigs where if you have a centerpiece guy, whether it's like Mobley, Jaren, who we talked about earlier, Chet in Oklahoma City, like you can have a really, really good defense. And it's something I've actually been interested in because I think, especially recently in the modern NBA, centers are peaking earlier than they used to. Because I think the primary responsibility now of most of these guys is to cover ground defensively. And I think that you have your best activity now. It's like kind of in your early to mid 20s in terms of you're flying all over the court, you're blocking a ton of shots, you're getting steals, and maybe you're a smarter player by the time you hit your late 20s, right? And there's some guys who are ageless. Draymond Green continues to have crazy impact deep into his 30s, right? But you see a lot of centers, they get into the late 20s. Maybe it's after they've gotten paid. Maybe they're just starting to slow down a little bit. They're not quite as springy with the young legs, and their impact isn't always quite there. So I think for somebody like Sarr, he's the player who I'm most interested in of these defensive pieces that you're talking about. He's probably closer to his peak than you think. It's probably not a 5-year thing down the road. It's probably like in 2 to 3 years, he's going to be giving you big time impact on that level, just based on the prototype. You see Chet, win a championship last year in year 3. I think you see Wemby, defensive player of the year candidate, leading a top defense this year in year 3. You see Mobley, insane on-off splits and advanced stats and taking a team last year to the second round of the playoffs, being a key player there. So just something to chew on as you're thinking about like what is this defensive ceiling look like. A jump is definitely possible for them, and I think that the brighter future probably isn't as far away as it feels if you look at kind of the modern trends of what people are being asked to do.
Yeah, and one thing I like is that all of these pieces fit together between those 3 guys, and they are talking about this together, and the coaching staff is talking with them. I think it was Bilal who said after the OKC game that BK and Brian Keefe has been very insistent with that trio about making sure that they understand what their defensive potential looks like. Because if you look at it, you have Bilal guarding at the point of attack. You have Keyshawn George, whose best skill is probably defending in short areas because of his timing with his hands and his strength. And then you have Alex Sarr, who's just cleaning up everything inside. And so there is some good cohesiveness between them, and all 3 of them can switch. And so you put a good 2-guard with them, and now suddenly you could switch through 2 through 5, and you can negate some of the actions that teams want to get to. And so it's something that could look really good in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, I think so. It makes sense. It also, it's a lot like when you're building an offense, right? Like you want to have the lead ball handler, you want to know who your center is, and then everybody else can kind of be 3 and D, and you're good, right? Or at least, you want shooters out there to fill out the lineups. Defensively, if you have the 1, the 3, and the 5 set, right, then filling in the other 2 spots, just finding interchangeable guys to kind of like, put into those groups and go forward. You've kind of already done the hard part, I guess, when you're trying to build this defense.
Absolutely. On that point with the offensive roles that we were talking about with the Wizards needing that star and that lead ball handler, one thing I do like with having a guy like Keyshawn George take on probably an offensive role that's bigger than he is suited for at this point in his career, and maybe will be suited for at any point in his career, it's easier to scale back someone's role than it is to ask them to do more and more and more. And so having him do more now makes it easier for him to do a little bit less because he's not being overtaxed now. He's just being the taxed the correct amount.
And I don't feel like you're, I mean, you tell me, but it doesn't feel like you're really dealing with the diminishing returns with him yet. Like we were
Not yet.
saying earlier, like the shooting numbers have just been through the roof. It's not like he's turning the ball over at an
He is
ungodly
turning the
rate.
ball. It is
Is
that's
it,
been the
is it?
one thing. It's been a little bit bad for him. I think he's sub 10th percentile, and you see multiple turnovers every game, and some of it that is, I think point forwards are more susceptible to that than any
Yeah.
other position, just because the dribble is a little bit higher, and even though his handle has gotten better, it's still something that can be exploited. And some of it is just he's an aggressive player, and sometimes he's gonna get an offensive foul because of the physicality he plays with, or try and get a little ambitious with trying to set a really good screen instead of moving one instead.
Yeah. How many does he turn over per game?
I'm looking at cleaning the glass. He's got a 19.8 turnover percentage right now, so second percentile among wings.
Wow. Okay. Well, that does need to improve. Fair enough. But you make up for it if you make every shot you take, right? So
There we
I
go.
guess I do think that's probably like a good warning sign. We're doing stock up and stock down. It's maybe actually hold on him because there could be a little bit of a market correction coming.
There will be
Yeah.
some
No.
level of regression for him at some point as far as the shooting. He's not going to shoot 50% from three as the year goes on, but most of what he's
Yeah.
done this year feels relatively sustainable because of the pace with which he plays. None of the shots he's taking are bad shots. Even the threes, I mean, he's taking maybe some contested ones, but most of those have been catch and shoot, just, quick releases. And because he doesn't have the dip on his shot, he's able to get those off. And you want him to be someone who eventually is taking those so confidently that he's someone who's a five-alarm fire, because now, next thing you know, he's pumping, he's getting by you, and the offense is moving into the next chain.
So when you're looking at like stacking up where the Wizards are compared to some of these other teams maybe in the tank race, I mean Brooklyn's definitely worse, like way worse in terms of talent, fit. Just the red flag comments from their coaches after basically every single game, just how hopeless their
Poor
point guard
Jordy.
position is. There's just no way Washington's gonna be able to keep up with Brooklyn. I think that's going to be impossible. Indiana, I know, has had a lot of injury issues, but they've maybe stolen a couple wins here and there. They figure to be pretty bad. Like, where do you prognosticating think Washington falls in that Eastern Conference pecking order? Like, is it 14th? Is that the
Ooh.
safe bet? Is it better?
No, I think
Because it's
14th
not going to
sounds
be
about right.
15th.
No, it's not going to be
Yeah.
15th. I think 14th in the East, and then overall, I think that they will try pretty hard, especially later in the season, to get into that bottom four, just because at that point, you're guaranteed the top eight pick. You're guaranteed the pick that your 2026 first, and you're guaranteed the swap rights with Phoenix. So I think that you will see them be pretty aggressive late in the season, as they were this past season, with engineering things to make sure that you're not winning too many games.
Well, as they should be. I mean, what's the alternative, right? As we're talking about it, like this is how you're going to get the talent. Like, there's not a lot of other venues for it, avenues for it. So, yeah, I think that's the right way to play it. But yeah, I think 14 sounds about right.
There we go. All right. What
It's
is your
not
question?
last
No, it's not last. Raise the banner. What's a question you have about the Wizards over the next week?
over the next week. Well, we've hit on some of these themes, right? It's like, okay, does Keyshawn George regress? If so, what does it look like? Bilal would be a question for me. Is like, all right, well, now that he's back up to speed and he's in the mix and he's putting the injury behind him, does he start to look a little bit better? I think the thing that you were talking about earlier, Bub Carrington, can he stabilize and be a little bit more helpful? Who's on their schedule for this upcoming week?
So they've got Boston tomorrow, and then after that, I think it's Cleveland, Dallas, Detroit, and Houston.
So I guess my question for this Boston game, what I would be watching is Sarr versus their front line. And their front line has taken a beating this year. I mean, they took a beating during free agency. Everybody left. And obviously Tatum's out for Boston. So it's a much different team. They're very exploitable. They play slow. Their front line is really tough. Not a lot of guys that you really enjoy watching. The other night, Yusuf Nurkic, who's kind of been a punching bag type player for a number of years, was able to bully his way to a putback layup to basically game winner, to take care of the Celtics and deflate their home crowd, right? So I guess in some sense they're going to be itching for a victory against Washington, but this is another opportunity for Sarr to assert himself, as we were talking about earlier. So does he start winning his matchups more consistently? This is a golden opportunity to do it. I guess that'll probably be what I'm watching in that particular game. Is he's going against a bunch of guys who basically are third stringers, right? In an ideal world, he should win those matchups. So what does it look like?
Absolutely. For me, we mentioned this a little bit, the Wizards have been playing well in a lot of these games, except for one stretch or one 5-minute segment where the game just gets away from them. Are they able to put a full 4 quarters together against any of the teams coming up? It doesn't have to happen again and again and again. You don't want it to happen again and again and again because of the lottery. But I think you do want to see both for an understanding of where the organization is and what some of these young players look like, but also, just from a morale standpoint, having some wins mixed in here and there, even if they're not coming. You don't want them to come consistently, but if you're able to have one game where you put it all together, so it's something that you could point to and say, hey, we can do this to keep everything moving smoothly as the season goes on, that's something I'm looking for over the next week.
So with these third quarter and fourth quarters where they're just giving up the big quarter, right, and where it kind of blows up the whole game, is there something the coaching staff could do? Is it timeout usage, or is this just sort of like the water's mounting and the dam eventually breaks? Like, how can we get to a more consistent 4 quarter place for Washington? Is it just age growing up? I mean, what is it?
I think that's a lot of it. Bilal Coulibaly said after the Knicks game that it was focus, and I think that's something that you see with the young teams, obviously. I think part of it is also just it's a talent differential, right? And so maybe you're able to out-hustle them for a half, but then they realize, oh, we are neck and neck with the Wizards. Let's step it up if you're the New York Knicks, right? So it's those things. You miss shots, and suddenly morale goes maybe a little bit down, and you're not defending as well, and the next thing you know, you're not getting stops, and now we're going to get set defenses. Oh, we're missing shots, and the cycle kind of keeps going from there. So I think it's that. And again, it's just a lot of it's just a talent thing, right? This is a team that is not meant to be one of the league's best. It's meant to be one of the league's worst, and sometimes it just takes a half to show up.
No doubt. I mean, there's some old teams out there too, and maybe Boston's not the best example because a lot of their older guys bailed, right? But there are free wins out there. As being here in LA with the Clippers, like they got run off the court by the Heat, just basically an effort loss. With Miami, Golden State's, dropped a couple games against teams that have been undermanned. I think that's the belief part of it, the focus part of it that Bilal is mentioning is huge, because I don't view this as such a talent deficient team as the Wizards have been in the past. Like, I think that they've turned the corner a little bit, and if they do stay focused, locked in, they got a chance against some of these teams out there. It's not going to be a 30-point blowout every single night, as long as they're playing as hard as they can and as long as they're playing together like they have for stretches. But yeah, that fourth quarter number was jumping off the page to me in terms of whatever it was, minus 20 something net rating. And their third quarter is pretty bad too, so it's like I think that's the tricky part, is like you got to come out of halftime and actually believe you can do it, and maybe they're not quite there yet. But I don't think they're as far away as they were maybe a year or two ago. I feel like they've really they've kind of condensed what they're trying to do. Like they've got it's all young players. The riffraff is no longer a part of the mix. The guys who are sort of transition players to me are not really a part of this mix anymore. And it takes a while to turn the corner, but I feel like they're on the upswing.
Progress. That's it. There's some progress happening, and you could kind of see the outlines of the plan that Michael Winger and Will Dawkins have engineered starting to come a little bit together. There's a long way to go, but you're starting to see it a little bit more than you did before, and that's all you can ask for sometimes with a team this young, with a rebuild this immense. Ben Golliver, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find your work?
The Washington Post. Ever heard of it?
Hey.
WashingtonPost.com/sports. I'm on Twitter at Ben Golliver.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care. Good luck.
Thank you so much to Ben for joining me. A reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please leave a 5-star review. You can follow me on basically every social media platform at Varun Shankar, and you can find the show using the handles in the episode description. I'll be back next week. Talk to you guys soon.